Okay, now what happens is that when you are doing ratio analysis, basically you are given 2 years, right? And in these 2 years, you actually need to make a comparison at that what has happened, right? Like now this says refer to appendix, consider the profitability of ACE by calculating the profitability ratios for 2013. Do you think the directors of ACE should be pleased with the profitability of the company? Justify your answer. Okay, now ratio analysis is basically where you are going to have profitability ratios, There are around three profitability ratios. Number one, you have GP margin, where the formula goes GP over sales into 100. Then you have net profit margin, where you have net profit over sales into 100. And then you have return on capital employed, which goes like net profit divided by capital employed into 100. Okay. These are basically the ratios which you need to calculate. Okay. Now these ratios basically tell how the overall performance of your business has been throughout the year. Like after the accounting year ends, you have a complete display of how your business has performed. So they basically portray that, right? Okay. Now, whenever you are doing this, so you will obviously have 1 year given. That means that you will be given with the 1 year of results. Like you see, gross profit margin 75%, net profit margin 10%, and return on capital employed by 20%. But then again, with the second year, you won't have any sort of result. They will ask you to calculate it. Now, how to calculate this is basically first, you have to calculate gross profit margin. Now, gross profit margin is GP over sales into 100.
Times 100.
Right? You have a
So that
GP, you have a sales. So that will be 200 divided by 250 multiplied by 100. Right? So you get a 200 divided by 250 multiplied by 100. So you got a 80%. Right? Then you have net profit margin. Now that goes again, net profit divided by sales into 100. Now over here, you can see that you don't have a net profit, right? So what you're going to do is net profit is calculated by net profit equals to GP minus expenses. So you have a GP of 200, you have an expense of 160, you got a net profit of 40 million. So you have a numerator now, 40 divided by sales were 250 and it was multiplied by 100. So it's 40 divided by 250 multiplied by 100. I got a 16%. Okay. Then you have return on capital employed. Again, the formula is net profit divided by capital employed into 100. So net profit was again 40 million divided by capital employees is 120 million multiplied by 100. So it's 40 divided by 120 multiplied by 100. You get a 33.3%. Understood?
Yeah.
This bit, okay. Now what you have to do is this is what I am now about to explain you is like this is for your own ease, right? Like this is something which you can do in the paper. Otherwise, it's not basically required.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the actual answer to the question would be because the profit margins have increased.
This have you just need to compare them. Okay. So this you can make a short table for yourself just for the comparison, because you can see over here I have written a complete analysis, right? So I'll explain you accordingly. Now, first of all, you have a 2012 and then you have a 2013 and you have a GP, you have a NP and you have a ROCE, right? So now you have in 2012 you had a 75% and you had a 10% and you had a 20%, right? In 2013 you have an 80%, you have a 16% and you have a 33.3%. So all these results are basically indicating that there was an increase of 5%, there was an increase of 6%, and there was an increase of 13.3%, right? It can be seen when you compare all these. So this is for your own ease. Now for that, you need to write down a complete analysis that what is happening. So I have actually written this down. I have made a small table again on a blank page, on a rough page, whatever you like. Because now what I have written is, like you can see, the company's gross profit margin has increased by 5%. Obviously, you can see that. And then it says that is 75% to 80%. This increase is due to, now whatever I am about to write is totally depends on a formula and my own understanding. You don't have any sort of information over here. So now listen, now see, this increase is due to high sales revenue, and company was able to control its cost of sales, whereas GP was higher, resulting in a higher GP margin. Now, whenever you calculate a gross profit, just a gross profit, ये वाली value कैसे आई? So gross profit is basically sales minus cost of sales. Okay. So what I assumed is that the company has an increased sales revenue, which you can see. In 2012, it was 200 million. In 2013, it was a 250 million. So we had an increase of 50 million, right? But you cannot see a cost of sales. There is no cost of sales. So I assumed that the company had a low cost of sales in 2013. I just assumed it. Due to which, when you had high sales and less expenses, you will definitely going to have a high gross profit, right?
Yeah.
Which will obviously lead to a higher gross profit margin. And you can see I've written this in English that the company, this increase is due to high sales revenue, and company was able to control its cost of sales, whereas GP was higher, resulting in a higher gross profit margin. This is basically the analysis you have. Okay. Then let's go towards, now yahan tak hamara net profit, gross profit margin analysis have been done. Now you have net profit margin. Net profit margin says that, again, I just told you that GP is calculated GP minus expenses. So you need to have a higher GP and you need to have less expenses in order to get a higher net profit and in order to get a higher net profit margin. We had an increase of 6%, but you just see what is happening over here. In 2012, if you calculate net profit, it's GP minus expenses. So we had a 150 minus 130. We got a net profit of 20. So obviously you can see that we had a 40 million in 2000. This was 2012. This is 2013. So you can definitely see that we have a higher net profit. But what else I can show you is that you had an expenses of 130, and over here you had an expenses of 160. And as I just told you that we need to have a control expenses. So what are we going to write over here? We are going to write net profit margin increased by 6%, that is 10% to 16%. Although the company was unable to control its expenses, but due to a higher sales revenue and a higher gross profit, company still managed to cover its expenses, resulting in a net profit, higher net profit margin. You samajh aayi baat? What it's saying?
Kind of. Not really.
Okay. See, look, company was unable to control its expenses, right? We had a 130 in 2012 and a 160 in 2013. But how come still we managed to have a higher net profit? It was because two reasons. Sales were high, and due to which led to a higher GP. And GP was like more than enough कि अगर expenses आपके ज़्यादा भी आ गए, like you in the end had higher expenses in 2013, GP covered all the expenses, जिसकी वजह से you were left with a good amount of net profit. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So that is what I have written, that although the company was unable to control its expenses, but due to a higher sales revenue and a higher gross profit, company still managed to cover its expenses, resulting in a higher net profit margin.
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, return on capital employed is basically return on capital employed. The formula is net profit divided by capital employed multiplied by 100. This is basically, capital employed is basically the amount you have invested in your business. The amount invested in your business and how much profit are you making while the investment. So in 2012, you invested 100 million, and in 2013, you invested 120 million. That means that you have invested 20 million more than the last year as compared to the last year.
Okay.
Due to which,
Yeah.
obviously, you might have invested in some new projects or in something expansion or something else, which has led to a higher net profit, higher returns. Right? So now what I have written is that return on capital employed has increased by 13.3%, that is 20 to 33.3%. ये आपने बात लिखनी है. This is basically an application which you need to mention in your answers. Then you have written
Okay.
that net profit has increased over the year, plus capital employees has also been invested in the business, which earns company was able to mint more returns, hence increasing the liquidity position of the company. Liquidity position
Okay.
means that company ka return, cash value, all these
Huh.
values increased.
Sure. ठीक है.
So just because of this, the liquidity position of the company increased. Returns increase, company की liquidity position अच्छी हो. This is how you are going
ठीक
to
है.
write. This is how you are going to write an analysis one by one. So now
Okay.
let's see. You had a question over here. See now over here it says the table shows the changes in the two efficiency ratio, receivable days and payable days. Okay. Now receivable days, it's very easy. It says now how is receivable. Now I cannot write on this paper. This is something. See?
Mhm.
It's still not allowing me to write on the paper. Okay, चलो कोई बात नहीं है. I'll do something. Give me a minute, okay? Copy करता हूँ.
Okay.
You can see everything, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now ratio analysis on this is that it says receivable days. Receivable days is again very easy. Receivable days. You had 30 in receive in 2018, and then you had in 2019 you had 45 days, and then payable days is 38 and 43. Analyze the implication of the changes for Wilson PLC's cash levels. Now, receivable days is basically the amount which is owed to the business. Now, Wilson PLC might have given some sort of a what you can say is some sort of a credit to its customers. In 2018, he had a receivable day policy of 30 days. Now he has a receivable day policy of 45 days. What the examiner is basically asking you, it's asking you for the liquidity position, that what is going to happen with the cash level. Like what is the cash position of the company over here? And payable days, you have 38 and now you have a 43. So over here, you have an increase of 15 days. And over here, you have an increase of how many days?
Uh,
5 days?
yeah.
Okay.
5 days.
So now receivable is basically the amount you are getting from your creditors, and payable is basically the amount you have to pay off to the suppliers you have taken credit from. So now over here, this thing is a problem. This basically shows that company might have a liquidity problem, because as the customers are now paying up late, which means low cash levels for PLC, Wilson PLC. Okay, as the company, as the customers are now paying up late, which means low cash levels for PLC Wilson. And on the other hand, suppliers to whom okay, now see, the liquidity, Wilson PLC is in a literal cash problem, because over here the customers who are actually paying are now delaying their payments by 15 days. They are not going to pay Wilson on time now, which is a very bad indication, as Wilson will now be left like has a more time for credit, right? But as Wilson, as suppliers has just given him the leverage of only 5 days extra to
Hmm.
pay. So that is 15 minus 5, 10 days. Up
Okay.
now, Wilson has to pay in 43 days, right? And he is going to receive the amount in 45 days, right? So there's just a very low margin between these two. You have to pay before and you are going to be paid later. This is a problem,
Hmm.
which means that Wilson has to actually pay it by his own cash position in his pocket. So this is a basically, for example, what if his creditors do not pay him on time and they take like extra time, more than 45 days? And what if the payable days, like what if the suppliers were actually demanding the amount from Wilson, are actually asking him earlier, कि नहीं आप हमें अभी pay करो right now? So what is going to happen? What will be the cash position of Wilson? Wilson will be in a drought of cash because the payment aa nahi rahi hai to him, and then he has to pay them earlier. So this is a problem for Wilson, and it says that you need to analyze it. So this is what the problem is. Now the implications is, because of all these cash problems, Wilson has to take some sort of measures. What he's going to do is he should reduce the receivable days. And how he's going to reduce the receivable days is by offering cash discounts to his creditors. Okay, he can offer credit discounts or cash discounts to his creditors so that they might pay earlier. And how, just to reduce these receivable days, he has to give them some sort of an offer so that iski jab payment ka time aaye, he already have cash with him. Either if he has to give away the cash discount or something, he needs cash to pay off all these expenses so that his liquidity position keeps intact. Otherwise, his business will be called a going concern. And going concern means that the near future of the business is not that good. The near future of the business is not that well. Company is in liquidity crisis. The investors are not going to invest in the business and they're going to pull out their investment from the business. Understood?
Yeah, understood.
So what you need to do is you need to actually, okay, ये तो हो गई बात receivable days की. Now for payable days, what he needs to do is he should negotiate with his suppliers. And how he is going to negotiate with his suppliers is by asking them to just extend his period of paying by telling them honestly that how much time his creditors are actually looking forward. For example, if he is about to get paid in 35 days, if the receivable days are reduced, then the 43 days payment period is fine. But if they are delaying the payment, then he should need to negotiate and he should ask the suppliers to extend his time period. Or what he can do is he could ask his suppliers to actually give him also the cash discount so that whatever discounts he has offered to his customers, he also gets the same discount from his suppliers. So his profits are going to keep intact. His cash balance will be intact, and he will be able to pay off his debts easily. His liquidity position will be fine. Investors are not going to pull out their investments.
Okay.
Understood? यहाँ तक समझ आया what is happening?
Yeah, समझ
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Achha. So this is how this question needs to be done. I will send you this, whatever I've done on the screen also.
Okay.
Okay, this is a very short question. Analyze the problems that might arise for a small business from the growth of digital technology. This is a general question. It says analyze the problems that might arise for a small business from the growth of digital technology. Say it. Can you write it down?
Okay.
And just submit it to me right now.
Right now?
Yeah, right now. Just one question. Okay.
Okay. I'm sick right now.
You're sick. I
Yeah.
feel that you're sick. What happened? You're in UK now and still you're sick.
Yeah. No, I think it's a cold, like a flu or something.
It's because of the weather change.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not used to UK weather anymore.